everyone, and welcome to another episode of Retail Redeveloped. I am so excited today to be joined by Naveen Jaggi. He is the president of Retail Advisory Services for JLL, also known as Jones Lang LaSalle. He leads the retail tenant rep, agency leasing, and capital markets business in the United States and Canada, and he leads the global retail board that oversees JLL's retail global cross-border platform. He's also responsible for the overall strategy, business development, and the growth of the retail platform, and he is all about driving business to produce effective, best-in-class connections and collaborations. Naveen, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thrilled to be here. Appreciate the invitation. Thank you. And certainly crazy times to be talking about retail, but no better time than now to talk about what's happening in the world today.
And before we get into the craziness of today, I would love for you just to take a minute and explain to everyone how you became the head of retail for JLL and how you kind of evolved in this business and where you developed the passion for retail that has brought you to sit in the seat that you're in now.
Great to talk about that. So, first of all, the passion for retail comes in my DNA. I'm a fourth generation retailer. So if you go back 4 generations to my great grandfather, he was a retailer in Northwest India. And as is my grandparents and the extended family, as was my father after he left the sciences, and today. So I'm a 4th generation retailer, so that's where I get my passion. As it comes to how I got to JLL today, it's fairly simple. I got in the industry in 2000, right after the dot-com bust, and joined CBRE as a tenant rep broker, and was a broker for 5-6 years. And when CB acquired Trammell Crow, they asked me to help grow the integration between Trammell Crow and CB. I did that for a couple of years until they asked me to be head of retail tenant rep. So from 2009 to 2014, I was tenant rep lead for CB. And at the time of my departure, I was the head of the America's tenant rep practice group. So at the summer of 14, I took a break. And just fortuitously, JLL decided to reach out to me. And at the same time, decided to grow a retail business. Prior to my arrival at JLL, they did not have a retail leasing business that we would know of as today. It was a number of people around the country that were doing great things, but it wasn't in a collaborative, connected platform way. So in January 2015, I took the opportunity to start the retail business at JLL, and I've been here now 5 years plus a few months. And we've certainly taken the business from what was pretty much a small niche player in the industry to now today, JLL sits as the second largest fully integrated third-party retail services firm in the industry. And we're proud to say that we are certainly, in my opinion, not the biggest, but we are the best.
That's a great background. Now, normally, let's for reference, today is March 24th, 2020. We are living in the time of coronavirus. So I thought today would be a very interesting opportunity to just do a State of the Union of retail in the United States and just take a minute to talk about what's going on, the effects that we're seeing, which are, massive and probably only scratching the surface of things to come. But I would just love to take a second and talk about how you guys are reacting, what you're telling your people, and just give me a little glimpse into how you guys are reacting and dealing with what's going on. I mean, when we were talking earlier, we're both, completely isolated in offices that were once, bustling and now are ghost towns, and that's across the country. So take a second and just tell me how you guys are dealing with it and telling your people how to deal with it.
Yeah, happy to. So Adam, when you think about our business today, had you called me on this topic 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago, I would have told you I was bullish on retail. I have been for the last 2 or 3 years. When all the talk of retail apocalypse was being spoken, my comments were that retail is actually quite healthy. And I've really felt that way. All of the underlying fundamentals about retail were positive. In spite of some of the stresses, felt great about it. Now, lo and behold, 2 weeks later, it's a completely different conversation. Some of the things that we've been talking about lately are as follows. In spite of what we're living through right now today, fundamentally, our economy was in relatively good shape. We had low unemployment. We had significant wage growth, measurable wage growth. We had a sound economy in the Wall Street sector, and we certainly had growing industries in certain parts of the country. All of that, I think, still underlies my optimism, which is to say that though we may be going through some really challenging times, no fault of the retail sector, by the way, and no fault of the economy. This is something that's more of a health issue than is an economy issue. What we've been telling all our clients as a result is, look, all the fundamentals are strong in our industry. Understand that what we're going through is not the fault of a retailer, not the fault of an owner, not the fault of a lender, not the fault of the debt provider. This is something that's outside of our control. And as a result, patience is core and critical here. That may not be wonderful words for some industries like the F&B. They're suffering badly from day one. But the point is, our retail business fundamentally is strong. But for the next month or two or three, we're going through challenges that we've never gone through before, or certainly not in our lifetime, for sure, at least. Right, Adam? So as a result, what I'd say is, for anybody listening and anybody looking at a retail business, recognize we are at the tip of the spear. The retail sector, the retailing sector, is the most damaged sector as we deal with the pandemic. They're the frontline people, the restaurants, the bars, the shopping malls that are all closing down right now. All the people that run those businesses are feeling the pain immediately. And so we have to recognize that our conversations right now are revolving around short-term solutions. How can we help our retailer clients? How can we get the word out that some of them may be open for delivery, as example? That represents roughly 10% of most F&B businesses. But it can grow if they put enough effort behind it, and people like JLL and Cushman and CB and other companies promote the idea that the F&B sector needs our brokerage socialization of their needs. And so we've spent a lot of time over the last week, and I'm talking about how we can actually support that one vertical. So I would say at the end, fundamentals are strong, but for the next few months, it's going to be challenging. And I think here's the big point I like to tell most people when you think about it. Even if the federal government would come out tomorrow and send checks to people in the mail, the reality is that if retailers aren't open, you can't spend the money that they've been sent to. If you deliver someone $1,000, but no one is open for you to buy from, the $1,000 is going to go towards past debt, which doesn't necessarily help the economy today and tomorrow. So we've got to realize that we need far more assistance than sending people $1,200 checks. We need a lot greater effort in terms of giving short-term loans to businesses that can actually remain alive. So I think those are my two big points. Fundamentally strong, but we have to be far more active. ICSC needs to be more active, and we at the local level need to be far more active in urging our government, whether local, regional, state, or federal, to be involved in supporting the small business, because a small business is the backbone of our economy. It truly is. It's what gives our economy color, character, individuality. And we need to make sure that we ensure they survive to allow for that color to remain in our community.
Yeah, that's very well said, Naveen. I would ask another. You mentioned that patience is critical, which brings me to a question that I'm having kind of up and down the chain of command from tenant to institutional landlord. Obviously, we're at the 24th. The first of the month is next week. You have a lot of rent that is going to be due. That's, are they going to pay? Are they not going to pay? Which is going to roll up to a landlord, which is going to roll up to a debt or equity firm.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you think this is going to play out? How can these people exercise patience especially think if a landlord or a debt provider is over leveraged themselves? Like, how do you see, what scenarios do you see playing out, and what advice would you give to people either on the landlord side or on the tenant side?
Well, so I've been really encouraged. Amazingly, I've seen 2 or 3 different letters of landlords I can't mention by name who've actually been quite assertive in taking the first step in reaching out to tenants and saying, hey, listen, we understand what's going on is extraordinary. These are not ordinary times. And during extraordinary times, it requires extraordinary behavior by landlords as well as tenants and by debtors and lenders. As a result, I've seen 3 different letters from landlords saying, hey, tenant, we feel you. Let's come to an agreement. And that could be a case of saying, we hear you. call us and let's discuss your situation individually. I've seen a letter from a landlord that said, hey, we're going to right out of the gate send our tenants a letter that says, you're forgiven for 3 months. And in return, we want you to pay back 100% of what you were forgiven on in 2021 starting in January. But we'll give it to you over a 12-month period. So we'll extend the time for you to pay it. So if you miss 3 months at $5,000 a month as an example, so there's $15,000 in arrears, they're going to let you start paying it basically in 21, but not over 3 months, 12 months. So these kinds of signs I'm seeing from different landlords of the country are encouraging signs that they understand that these are situations that are out of the control of the retailer. This was not something that the retailer brought onto themselves, and it requires true partnership. I'm not encouraging anyone to not pay their rent, by the way. That's not the case. I'm encouraging everyone, both on the tenant and landlord side, to speak freely and speak openly about your business. Every business in America is not suffering the same level of pain. If you go outside in the streets today, you notice the grocery stores are doing quite well. Their pain is not anywhere like the pain of a bar or a restaurant that right now is seeing zero occupancy. So you have to have individual conversations as opposed to a broad stroke solution for all retailers with forgiveness. Because some businesses likely don't need the forgiveness and won't ask for the forgiveness because it's clearly indicated in the public that they're very active and very busy. But the difference is the ones who need it are certainly the ones that should feel very comfortable reaching out to the landlord and asking for an open discussion, whether it's 1 month rent abatement for the moment, just to see how things develop over the next 30 days, or actually start discussing a short to long-term solution, which is you may go to a 1 or 2 or 3 month abatement followed by a percentage rent for 6 months so that you can get back on your feet. As I said a while ago, Adam, once we start going back to opening up restaurants and opening public places and entertainment venues, doesn't mean that the consumer will show up right away and start spending at the way he did before. Every time we've had a recession or a significant event, 9/11, 2008, and now this, the consumer's been very slow to come back to spending. It takes somewhere between 6 months to 12 months for the consumer to regain his footing, either from lost wages or lost confidence in the sector that they want to spend money in. So this takes time. And so it can't just be a 1 or 2 or 3 month solution. That's what I'm advising both landlords and tenants. Don't think short term, think longer term.
So, question for you about the timing. I absolutely agree with what you're saying about people are kind of licking their wounds and it takes a little while for everybody to recover. But I also wouldn't be surprised. I mean, we were already on a flight to local. Now I think it's becoming a sprint to local. Like everybody is acutely aware that their favorite coffee shop that they can walk to is shut down or is
right.
Trying to pour lattes on the sidewalk or something like that.
Right.
I wonder if we will see a sharper bounce back with people flocking to their kind of local watering holes that make it, that are able to survive this and just say, guys, I'm so happy you made it. Here is, I'm getting to go for my whole block. I'm
right.
doing this, I'm doing that. I'm, buying gift certificates. I've seen some really interesting kind of outpouring of emotions for, your local watering hole. So I wonder if the combination of cabin fever, which we all have, I certainly have, didn't think I'd be homeschooling my kids for the next few months. I wonder if we'll see a sharper bounce back on a local level and our local kind of neighborhood, mom and pop-ish kind of guys that everybody wants to have a feel-good story and go back and support, as opposed to just kind of a national awakening and a national kind of resurgence.
I definitely think there's going to be a V recovery. I agree with you. I do believe that when there's a certain moment where it becomes quite obvious that we've gone past the curve and there's a certain level of accepted safety to go out, I think you'll see a pretty quick action by people who can. I think grassroots efforts, to your point, locally, will be important. I heard a term the other day that I can't own, but I love the term. Someone said to me, nothing would be better for the economy than revenge shopping. And I love that term.
I do love that.
I mean, think about it. The idea is that, you have all this pent-up demand to spend because economically we're strong up until this pandemic hit. So there's this pent-up demand to spend, pent-up demand to go out and do something with your dollar, no matter whether it's this local 7-Eleven or whether it's the mom-and-pop store down the street or it's a nice restaurant. Either way, I think that will be what we call the V recovery. And I do think it'll happen in 2 forms. One, at a national level, you see people probably shopping sooner. There is that time lag for people to get over the shock, which I referenced a while ago. But I don't think this will be a 12 to 24 months recovery. If you remember 2008, we didn't see the recovery start taking shape until 2010. So if the recession hit basically in the summer of 2008, and the recovery for most private purchase was considered in play by 2010, that was somewhere in the order of 18 months. It will not take that long for us to come back to recovery. I think you'll like to see us as an American consumer start moving towards spending and moving towards getting out and spending in a much sooner timeline. I would look at that as probably a 2-month cycle from the time when we get an all clear, if you will, where we've got a handle on the cases that are found to be with corona individuals is lower than the treated cases. All of that tends me to believe that we're probably looking at 2 months. So I'm very, very bullish, Adam, on the idea sometime by midsummer, June to July, we should start feeling as if we are free to go out and start shopping again.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. So I'd love to hear, a story or an example of how a retailer or restaurateur that you know or that your team knows and how they're coping with this. As an example, a friend of mine owns a really cool brewery here in Charlotte, North Carolina, and the majority of their sales were from their tap room, right? That's nothing novel. Now they've transitioned to full blown canning line, delivery, you name it, they're doing it from any way that they can, and have been able to keep the numbers going, right? They've been able to keep everybody rolling, and completely shifted their business model almost overnight. I'd love to hear if you have any examples that you could share that maybe would help, a local guy that's trying to figure out how to keep the lights on or keep it together.
Right. So I'm based in Houston, as you may know. We have not gone through a full lockdown here. So as opposed to LA or San Francisco, which is in a full lockdown, and as a result, you don't even see much activity on the streets. We still have some activity by way of restaurants being open for delivery or drive-through. I think you may have heard, in the news last week that the governor of Texas, which Texas doesn't allow for drive-through liquor for consumption, right? We have open container laws in the state. But he put a waiver on that for drive-through margaritas. That was the tagline that we started seeing, was that for the first time in Texas, you could actually go through a window at a restaurant or pull up to a window, get your fajitas or get your Tex-Mex, and also get your margaritas, which before that waiver was signed by the governor, you couldn't. So as a result, that was a good faith effort by the governor to say, we understand the trying times, we have to be flexible. So what that means is we're seeing a lot more drive-up, curbside activity than I've ever seen before. There's a few restaurants that we like to patron here in Houston, where I live, in the medical center area. And the number of restaurants that have basically created an outdoor drive-up type of setup for people to order online or through Favor or through Uber Eats or whoever you use has actually been a boon for most of these retailers. I'm not saying that substitutes for the fact that you have a room full of 100 people eating dinner and paying wait staff, but there's a movement afoot in our community to tip as aggressively as possible, right? For the obvious reasons. Let's make that money flow down. So as an example, Adam, there's a gentleman who runs a hospitality group here in Houston. He has started a GoFundMe program through Venmo, and 100% of the dollars that you contribute, and these are at $200 to $100 clips. He's limited basically to $200 per donation. That money goes 100% to the wait staff and downstream people that work within a restaurant, not intended to go to the owner. And the owners are very, very sensitive to this, and they understand they want to take the money and give it to the people who are the backbone of their industry. So to the extent that every community that listens to this podcast can rally around their restaurants and their groups, and someone can own establishing a GoFundMe page, and that's designed for 100% of that money to be distributed between the restaurants that you guys patron, that would be one way to support the people that need it most, which is likely the dishwasher, the waitress, the part-time student that's going to go to school but works 10 hours a week just to help pay some debts. That's the kind of thing I'm hearing about and seeing across the country, and I'm proud to say I'm part of that community here in Houston.
Yeah, we're starting to see some of that as well. I'm actually doing a podcast later today with a group that has started a buy local GoFundMe / just coalition that's doing the same thing. It's incredible that people. I mean, sometimes it takes a tragedy like this to get people to kind of get out of their own comfort zone. But it's been incredible
That's
to
right.
watch.
Yeah.
So you going along these same lines of trying to adapt. I mean, obviously, to go delivery was becoming year over year, positive comp for certainly restaurants and other. I mean, didn't know what Uber Eats was 2 years ago, and now it's very common. I'm very curious to hear your take on maybe some potential innovations that come from this extremely bizarre, trying time. Do you think? I mean, like last night, for example, my wife did a happy hour Zoom chat with all of her friends, her college friends from New York City, and Zoom. Wish I would have bought some Zoom stock 6 months ago because every
Right.
meeting that I have is on Zoom now.
Right.
What other innovations do you think that could come out, or just maybe shoot from the hip, that you can see our kind of behavioral patterns change in the retail world due to just being on lockdown?
Yeah. So, I think the biggest behavioral outcome here will likely be people recognizing that even in the grocery and F&B sector, ordering online doesn't have to be a foreign concept. We used to think for the longest time that the grocery business and the F&B business in general was fairly Teflon to the encroachment by online. We know that there are people that order online and go pick it up. We know Uber Eats and Favor and those kind of groups do that. But generally speaking, with less than 3% of all grocery sales being online and fulfilled that way, it felt like it was a pretty safe bet that you would pretty much go to the grocery store to buy your own goods. I think that will be a behavioral change in that I think people will now start to realize that as technology gets to the point where you can order online with fresh goods, and as more and more services are there to bring the fresh goods to you, people will be more comfortable with using a online forum to order food, whether it is grocery or whether it is fresh foods from your favorite Tex-Mex fajita place. So I'll give you an example. There's a company called Nuro, Nuro. Nuro is a Silicon Valley-based company that's been engaged by Kroger to practice and to learn to do automated car delivery of groceries. And I just happen to be living in a neighborhood where our neighborhood is one of the 3 test markets in the country. And I've seen for the last year these cars, these Priuses, driving around my neighborhood for over a year, probably close to 18 months now. And they're Nuro branded cars, and they're learning our neighborhood. They're driving our neighborhood every day, every hour of the day, and they're learning our neighborhood, machine learning our neighborhood. These are drivered cars, but they're teaching cars to drive our neighborhood driverless. And the intention is that in the next year or two, we're going to start seeing Kroger doing home delivery with driverless cars. That's a big breakthrough. That when the day comes that you can order food online and a driverless car comes to your house and the doors open up automatically and you walk out of the house and you grab the groceries and put them in, that's going to be a massive shift in our industry. So to me, I think getting people comfortable about buying groceries and buying F&B product online is, to me, probably the biggest shift we'll likely see over this 2 or 3 month period that we're going to go through right now.
That you brought up something that I find very, very interesting, and let me run a theory by you that I keep hearing when I speak to very intelligent retail people because of this podcast. I can see, like, kind of doubling down on what you said about the autonomous car Prius dropping off my milk and bread and eggs on my front doorstep. I
Right.
can see a time, certainly in my lifetime, if not in the next 5 years, 10 years, where instead of going into my 45,000 square foot Kroger that, costs, God knows what to build and God knows what in rent every month,
Yeah.
I can
Right.
see it being more of an Amazon Go, very limited inventory, kind of showcase, neighborhood showcase with a 150,000 square foot distribution center that's 15 minutes away that's paying $6 a foot in rent, and it's just a giant logistics center, for lack of a better
Yes.
word, where it's just humming out these autonomous cars, or even actual delivery. But that, I think I could see the grocery doing a complete 180 from kind of the arms race to the biggest, most beautiful. We got a bar inside. Come and have a girls' night up here or something like that.
Right. I think all of these things in the world we live in today are very, very possible. I'm not going to put it past us right now that in the next couple of years we're going to see some transformative changes in the way we consume. And all of those aren't bad, by the way. I mean, I can remind everybody that all of the fear we have, sometimes we talk about the fact that brick and mortar is being attacked by online sales. It's one channel. It's not omni-channel. It's not multi-channel. It's one channel. You're a retailer selling goods to somebody. A good retailer doesn't care how it is sold, and shouldn't care how it's sold, by the way. If they're really good at what they're providing their clients, consumers will engage at multiple levels with you. Sometimes they'll buy online, sometimes they won't. Getting comfortable with the idea that the same buyer can buy something online as well as come in physically once or twice a week is actually a good thing, because that means they're engaged with you at multiple levels. And that's what we want. We want full up and down engagement with consumers. We don't want spot engagement. You want total engagement. I think this is not that this is something we would have ever wanted to happen, but I think helping people understand that you can balance both. Because keep in mind, I guess what's also happening. People are getting hungry to go shopping. Pardon the pun. When you tell people you can't go shopping, you have to do everything online, there's actually a built-in hunger to want to go back out and shop. And one of the things I do anticipate from this is people will have a better understanding of how to manage both the online dynamics of shopping with the physical. Because right now, people can't go to a Simon Mall. They're having a hard time going to a Taubman Mall because they're closed. When they open, I think consumers will understand how to manage their buying habits based on both options.
And it's very interesting. That was a beautiful transition back into letting me kind of retail nerd out with you a little bit.
Yeah.
How are you seeing the direct-to-consumer guys talk about the halo effect and how they've started to transition into brick and mortar, and how they're able to kind of track their sales based on kind of credit card zip code reporting and things of that nature? Are they still as bullish on, obviously, let's take the last 3 weeks out of the equation. Let's go back in time to a more simple time. Are they still as bullish on, okay, I've grown my footprint. I have tremendous amount of competency as it relates to my online kind of hunt kill platform, right? I know how to gather this data. I know how to convert sales online. Now I'm able to put a brick and mortar store and I watch the sales around there mushroom. Are the guys that you converse with still as bullish on that strategy?
Yes, very much so. I think data dissemination, understanding who your client is, their behavior patterns, how to target your business at a macro level, not a micro level, but at a macro level, how to target your business to that consumer in the most effective way to find them and engage them the right way. That absolutely, to me, that's going to continue. No doubt in my mind that's going to continue. I don't see, however, some have predicted that one day 50% of all retail sales in America will be online. I think there's a distinction there. If 50% of all retail sales in America will be engaged with or promoted with or started with an online engagement, I think that's possible, right? You and I want to go buy something. Before we decide to go to Whole Foods or before we decide to go to Best Buy, we may go online, check out the pricing, and check out what we are interested in buying. That's just engagement. We may still go to Best Buy to touch and feel it, or Whole Foods to touch and feel it. But the idea of engagement online at 50%, that doesn't surprise me. Will we go to the day where 50% of every dollar is spent online without ever leaving your home? I don't think that's ever going to happen. I think we're going to bear that out in the next 6 months when people find out the value of shopping physically. That, I think, will be the defining moment for us as a consumer to understand the value of the shopping mall, the shopping center, et cetera.
Well, and it's already going 180 degrees from that. I mean, I talk about this. I'm repeating myself for people that listen to this podcast. I thought it was so fascinating to go into beta when I was in Hudson Yards in New York City last time I was up there and see that they want you to go into the store so they can make you go home and do your own research and buy it online, right? I was
Hmm.
introduced to all these incredible brands that I didn't even know existed or I had seen online but had never touched and felt and heard and smelled and yada yada. Like, for example, the example that I like to use is the Theragun, which is an impact massager. If you like to work out and you get sore, this is like the Cadillac of massagers. I'd seen that online. I also saw that it was, $400 or $500 when you can get a knockoff for 30, and didn't understand how cool it was and how the tactile feeling that you get from it until I went in the store and wasn't pushed to buy it, right? I was educated
Right.
about it and I
Yeah.
was introduced to their ecosystem, and now I'm a fan and I'm sitting here talking about it to you. So
Hmm.
it's fascinating how this omni-channel is to your point just a buzzword, and really these retailers are trying to figure out how to engage in all parts of our lives.
Absolutely. And I think that's the world we're going to be in, and I think that's not a bad thing, by the way. I mean, I think that's the reality of the world we're living in right now is full on engagement. And at the end of the day, the retailers are getting smarter at how to connect with you and I. But I think we're also getting smarter about how to distinguish between what kind of engagement we want, right? Turning off our phone, turning on our phone, knowing when we want to engage with the phone versus not. I mean, I know that my kids actually, who seem to be, by the press's statement, to be the most obvious consumers online, are not. My kids aren't. And I think there's many more of my kids that will actually be open to the idea of shopping if you give them a fundamentally sound reason to shop. I think that's the days of putting things on the shelf and consumers to flock in and buy it, those days are over. And I think the millennials and Gen Zs have proven that. But they're not averse to shopping. I mean, the power of Instagram has proven that if you put something on Instagram, get them to engage at that level digitally, they will still come into your store. I think that's one, and these are all lessons that we'll probably find out far more substantively coming out of this, call it 2 3 month pandemic event. I don't want to call it depression or recession yet, but it's going to be something. I'll let the economists define it. But when we come out of it, that'll be one of the big takeaways, in my opinion.
I love that perspective. So right now, obviously, I'll speak for myself. My business has changed drastically in the last 2 weeks. I'm sure that you guys are feeling it as well. What advice would you give to a young broker? I was getting into the business, right before the financial crash, and I remember thinking I was fairly smart to knowing for sure that I didn't know shit.
Yeah.
So what advice would you give to a young broker that maybe hasn't seen anything like this yet and is more than a little nervous trying to figure out what's going on right now?
All right. First of all, remember, uh, everyone is experiencing the same thing, from the top dog $1 million producer to the newbie who just joined the industry 1 year ago. Everyone is feeling the same amount of pain. You're not alone. One. Two, everyone has time. When everyone has time, take advantage of it. Call all of your clients and don't ask for something, give information. All of your clients are desperate to hear what's happening out in the marketplace. Trust me when I say this. They want to hear from you of what you've heard. They don't care if they hear it 4 times the same way. They want to hear 4 people say the same thing sometimes. That just reiterates and reinforms them on the fact that what they're hearing from one person is the same as the next person, same as the next person. So the young people need to understand, call all your clients and tell them what's going on in the marketplace. 3, call all of your clients and say thank you. This is the time when they have maybe not as much to do as they did before, and they've got time. Why don't you call them and say thank you, and thank you for their business, thank you for their trust in you. And lastly, get to know your clients. In the past, maybe your clients were just people you did deals with, but maybe now's the time to look them up on LinkedIn and find out their passion is golf or fishing. They have 3 kids, and one of their children is a marathon runner. Whatever the case may be, get to know your clients as people. Get to be grounded in them as people. They will appreciate you for you asking good questions about them as individuals long after this is over, and they'll call you back because they know that you cared enough to call them when the going was tough, not only when the going was good.
I think that that's such simple advice, but it's so true, and I think that everybody from the biggest stud broker developer down to a guy that's 2 weeks into the business can learn something from that. So you've already been extremely generous with your time. I want to ask you a couple quick bullet questions before we finish up. But before then, would you let people know kind of how they can engage with you? Are you on social or LinkedIn? How can people understand what you guys at the JLL team are doing and get to know a little bit more about you guys?
Yeah. So if anybody wants to reach out to me, please do. I welcome anybody anytime. I'm on LinkedIn, so you can find me pretty easily there. My email address is easily found on the JLL website. It's naveen.jaggi@am.jll.com. Look, I love retail, and I'm a big believer that our industry is the best. Why is it the best? Because everyone is a consumer. At the end of the day, everyone you talk to consumes. They know our business intuitively. They don't know it in detail. They don't know what it requires behind the scenes, but they understand it because they understand the fact that at the end of the day, people need to go shopping. So if you understand that as a advisor slash consultant slash broker, people know your business, now you've got them softened up. Now's your chance to engage with them at a human level and understanding your business. So to me, I will always say our business is the funnest business to be in and most relatable business to be in. And as a result, it's our job as advisors, Adam, to make our clients understand our business is fun. And that's the way we retain quality talent, by making sure they understand how much fun our business can be.
Could not agree more. I have to sit through a lot of kind of joint sessions with partners I do office brokerage and industrial brokerage with, and even when they're pulling down full floor commissions and having a great day from a monetary perspective, I am so thankful to do what we do because it's fun, it's hard, it's complicated. Most people don't want to get their hands dirty enough to learn the business on a very deep level. And I get excited about it, just talking about it, as you can tell.
Yeah.
So a couple questions before we let you go.
Mhm.
How do you see us moving forward from this? How do people kind of shake the dust off and rebuild? What will it take to kind of rebuild consumer confidence, certainly from a retail perspective, and get back to a place of development and growth? And what do you think timing? We talked about, hopefully over the summer, but what do you really think it's going to take for some of these developments that are maybe in a precarious position, timing wise, debt wise, construction, supply chain wise? I mean, what do you think it's going to take to get everybody kind of rowing back in the same direction?
So I would say that, first of all, don't expect that this will ease up in the next 2 to 3 weeks. I think we need to be practical about the fact that the government wouldn't be going to this level of stimulus consideration. $2 trillion are being considered to stimulate the economy. They wouldn't be doing this if this is for them a 2 or 3 or 4 week hiccup. No. This is going to take a few months. So let's just understand that this is going to likely last until we get to June or July. So the first thing is just managing time expectations. We spoke earlier about the fact that will the recovery be a U recovery or V recovery? I would tell everybody to understand that if this lasts June or July, at some point this summer, we will have gotten past the pandemic level of fear that we are living in today. And at that point, you will see what I call revenge shopping, that term I used a while ago. I think we will likely see that things move pretty quickly between August, September, and October. I look at the third quarter as being critical for us. And everybody on this call that's listening to this podcast, understand, if you focus right now on doing all your field work in Q2, you're better prepared for what your clients will need for you in Q3. Because I can assure you, when everybody starts getting back to work, spending money, there'll be a pent-up demand to do deals like we haven't seen in a long time. Because unlike 2008, when we had a liquidity issue, there is not a real liquidity issue today. There are retailers with liquidity issues for survival, but liquidity from a banking institutional lender standpoint doesn't exist. So there will be plenty of money out there for people to do deals. So just be prepared. So A, be patient. B, be prepared. Because when it comes back, it will come back fast. It'll come back hard.
So one more question. So in Charlotte, before the call you were asking about just kind of economics, what's going on in Charlotte. Charlotte was just absolutely booming.
Yeah.
And we have just every day there's a new crane going up. So we've been experiencing tremendous growth. We're on a very short list with kind of the Nashvilles and the Austins of the world for kind of the young up and coming city. Where I think
Yeah.
the stat there was 105 people a day moving to Charlotte, and because of that, we've seen tremendous rent growth from an office, multifamily, and retail side, especially in a neighborhood called South End that I'm very active in and have a lot of developments going. Do you see this as having any kind of rent adjustment reset effect and maybe bringing those rents back down to earth a little bit more? Or do you think this is more of a V bounce where, no deals are going to get done until people can kind of shake the cobwebs off and then it's going to be business as usual?
Oh, I certainly think that we will see some rent regression. Do I see a significant, 20, 30% rent regression? No. Because again, the fundamentals are strong. And the major markets we're talking about, whether it's Charlotte, Austin, Nashville, Houston, Dallas, the West Coast, the Southeast, all those markets are still strong. And so as a result, when we come out of this thing, I don't see a big shift. I doubt you'll see landlords cutting long-term deals at 25 or 30% of rent levels that they were a month ago. I don't think that's going to happen, because if we believe that we're going to have a V-shaped recovery, if you have a V-shaped recovery, you're likely going to have most of our owners recognizing it's a short-term concession with their tenants, but not a long-term concession to their portfolio.
I absolutely am pulling for you to be correct, and I share those sentiments. Naveen, I just want to take a moment and acknowledge you for coming on, kind of assuaging people's fears, talking about what you're seeing in the market. Obviously, you have a very interesting kind of global perspective on this business, and I just want to take a moment to say thank you for coming on and sharing your knowledge with the listeners and with somebody that maybe was feeling a little uneasy and needed to hear from somebody like you.
Well, I appreciate the invitation, Adam. And like I say, if you're in this business, you better be in the business because you love it. I love it. And if you love it, you're in for the long haul. Be patient. Understand that we go through cycles once every 10 years. We're in one right now. But if you're patient, you'll be justly rewarded on the backside.
Well said, Naveen. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, sir.